we have so many interests and so many things have like inspired me, whether consciously or subconsciously, artistically. So it's not just photography, it's movies, it's cinematography. It's at one point I wanted to be a PD, like a music PD. So it's not
Mhm.
just those things that um, inspire me, even if I'm working on my own projects.
Today's guest is Antonia Giordano, a multi-genre photographer and writer originally from New Jersey and currently based in Seoul, South Korea. Antonia's work lives at the intersection of visual storytelling and thoughtful narrative, using photography not just to document moments, but to explore identity, place, and the emotional undercurrents of everyday life. Working across cultures and continents, Antonia brings a deeply observant perspective to her practice, blending imagery and words to reflect on belonging, transition, and the quiet complexities of human experience. Her work invites viewers and readers alike to slow down, look closer, and sit with nuance, whether that's in a portrait, a scene from daily life, or a piece of reflective writing. Today, we'll be talking about creativity, identity and culture, burnout and recovery, imposter syndrome, and what it really looks like to sustain a creative life while living abroad. I'm your host, Charvon Hales, and this is Light, Life, and Limitations, a podcast where creativity meets reality.
When the world feels out of frame, every thought, every fear, every revelation, I find my way through the quiet flame, lighting life in all the limitations.
Welcome, Antonia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Antonia. Thank you for the nice introduction. As mentioned, I've been working in Seoul for the past few years, both as a photographer. There's a lot of slashes: photographer slash journalist slash editor slash a lot
Mhm.
of things. It's been a quite a bit of a intriguing and unexpected but nice ride into doing a lot of those things. So I'm grateful for the opportunities that have been given to me or that I found. That kind of just is like one of those things that tends to motivate me to kind of continue working as a creative in Seoul, maybe despite some of the difficulties and complications that can come with uh, working on two different continents, basically.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
speaking of being on 2 different continents, let's talk about first how you and I even met, which is so random. So we're both fans of I have my Sugar Augusty shirt on today. We're both fans of BTS,
Hmm.
and we were both part of Twitter Army.
Yes.
And I think at some point you maybe started following me or messaged me, and then I went to your profile. I was like, "Oh, she's a photographer in Seoul. Let me follow her back." And then we started chatting, we realized we were in the same, like, age range,
Hmm.
and then at some point, I think you were coming to the August D concert.
Yeah.
You were coming to the States for the August D concert, and you had posted a story on Instagram showing your arrival at the Philadelphia International Airport, and I was like, "What are you doing in Philly?" Like, what?
Where are you going?
Yeah, you're like, "Oh, I'm home visiting family." I'm like, "Wait a minute, family?" And then come to find out you were originally from the States. I thought you were from, from Seoul,
Yeah.
originally. I mean, well, you can kinda get into that backstory because you're from Korea originally, right? You were
Yeah.
born in Korea, raised in the States.
Yeah.
But then that just kinda, like, opened up the door for us to, like, meet up in person. I think we met up, got
Exactly.
some drinks, and it was, kinda like a instant friendship, and that
Yeah.
at that point, let's see, it's now been almost 3 years, right?
Has it been 3 years? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
because it was around the time of the concert, which was his tour was in 2023. So,
Yeah. And then you came to
yeah.
Seoul
And
too.
then I came to Seoul, we met up, and we
Yeah.
went on our BTS tour. So,
Yeah.
and now
Funny
here we
thing
are.
about that funny thing about that BTS tour too, um, I like you're in a city, but you never do the city tour things that are
Yes,
in that city.
like me with
So
Philly.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So like Philly, New York, same thing, right? So
Mhm.
I didn't even know that In the Soup tour even existed until I think somebody that until you I think you mentioned it. I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
I guess that'd be kind of cool because I do like the Korea countryside, and so like having we already knew each other, but then I was like they had that separate like, bus situation, and so
Mhm.
it's been cool to still actually stay in touch with a few of the people that I met on that
Oh,
tour as well.
nice.
And then I'm not usually like, "Ooh, I have to find friends." I'm not like the biggest social media person, but it was nice also, in that weird time period, to, interact with, like, Twitter Army, that there were some, like, nice, there have been people too that, again, that I've met, in real life and talked to online that I still talk to each
Mhm.
to this day. I've gone to a concert with a few other people, and,
Mhm.
if they've even if it's not Korea isn't even if it's not BTS or any other K-pop group-based event going on, and they've come to Seoul, that we've still
Mhm.
hung out, so
Yeah.
it was an unexpected surprise because
That's the thing I like about this fandom is that when I travel for work, like, if there's somebody that I've, like, met on Instagram or Twitter, via being, Army,
mm,
we've met up for, like, Korean
mm,
barbecue or we go out for drinks or, so it's like,
yeah.
people kind of make time for each other, um, and, and then you find other common interests. So for
Yeah.
us, that's been photography, DJing, playing the guitar, all the ADHD things that we have in common. Like, why do we have all the same hobbies, right?
You mentioned that, and I'm like, "I had no idea either."
Like, every time you post something, I'm like, you posted your DJ lesson. I'm like, "I literally just took a DJ lesson this summer."
Like, "God
Uh,
damn it."
so let's talk about,
Mm,
living in Seoul, because
mm,
if I recall correctly, um, moved to Seoul during the
mhm,
pandemic, right?
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually been a bit of a venture, that's kind of spanned a little bit longer than that. So,
Mhm.
originally, I had moved to Korea, generally speaking, in, like, 2017, 18, around
Okay.
that time period, and I actually went, speaking of Augusty, went to taught did my first, English teaching job in Daegu,
Mm.
and
Oh,
then,
nice.
I went from Daegu to Busan, and then I left for, like, about just a year just to see what other opportunities there were in that
Mhm.
region, and then, at some point, I had heard, I was in Taiwan at that point, and I heard about the pandemic being in the States. So I was like, well, I was kind of going back and forth between whether do I go back to the US or do I go back to Korea?
Mhm.
That kind of that kind of made, I guess, the choice a little easier. And then from that point on, from about the right before the pandemic on to now, I've been, like, living in Seoul for that time. So, um, but, uh, a lot of good things have happened, though it wasn't my original intent at all to come. I'm like one of those people, "Oh, I stayed," "I thought I was gonna be there for a year," and then ended up staying consequently a lot longer. So
Mhm.
it's been a nice kind of interesting ride in that sense.
So, were you already doing photography before you got to Korea, or was that something you kinda started when you got there?
I did it a little bit, while I was living in the East Coast, like New Jersey, New York area,
Mhm.
and of course, like, New York's, you know, renowned, and, there's always something interesting happening on the street for you to
Mhm.
capture and photograph, and
Yeah.
so, um, I was, uh I was a bit more of a street photographer at that point, and then when I moved, art was not in the forefront of my mind because you're kind of told, "Okay, there's just these specific opportunities," and there was a lot less than it even is now, and it's, like 90% of the opportunities are always like, English teaching based.
Mhm.
So, really that was the only specific thing that I had in mind. And then, there was a couple of art groups that I happened to kind of link up with. And
Mhm.
that sort of slowly kind of gave the slight push, like, oh, maybe I can do some more like artistic things
Mhm.
while I'm in Korea. But it started when I was first living in Korea. It really um, I guess on the peripheral would seem like more hobby based because it was, just a very secondary thing for me, like when I had
Mhm,
the time or when I could do it. And then the pandemic happened, and then like, oddly enough, not oddly enough, but if anybody has taught English out there
mhm.
in Korea, especially in Seoul, knows it's very
Eyes are on.
competitive. Yeah, it's competitive for the student, but it
Mhm.
is also very stressful for the teachers as well.
Okay.
And you have very little time, outside of, yeah, you go to work 9 to 6 or 9 to 4, but then you have like, mountains of like paperwork and
Mm,
corrections and things you have to prepare. So there's like really not a lot of free time to do too much other things. And so it wasn't really until the pandemic happened that, oh, now I have this, kind of extra time to do things. And I forget how the US worked, but in Seoul, in Korean in Seoul, you could still be within like contact of people, but
mhm.
like it was just limited to how many were in a group, which
Yeah,
is
I think that's what they were doing here with the
yeah,
schools. It was, almost kinda like a hybrid rotating situation because I had a friend
yeah.
who's a teacher, so it'd be like half the students would be physically in the room, the other half would be online, and they were kinda like rotating every day or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And then so given that it kind of changed the situation of, now you just sent the books home to the kids, you look things over, but the corrections, like those things were a lot different. And so
Mhm,
then it gave me time to kind of think about photography and just kind of document what I was seeing
mhm,
happening, how like the that like, sometimes that odd feeling of being in what is considered, like, one of the busiest cities in the world, now this very quiet, area, and then, it also gave me the opportunity to, work on my craft, which is,
mhm,
like, doing more portraits and things like that, like, because you only had to be one-on-one with people.
mm,
And, Seoul already has a good in this way, has a good, like, system of, like, you can rent a place, and it's just you and the subject with you. You don't have to, you don't have to have a big team with you, so
mhm,
it kinda gave me that time to sort of develop my confidence in that regard because I didn't come from, like in a photography background
like
per
a formal
se.
background, yeah.
Yeah, and, and so it gave me some time to, like, work on my skills in that sense, so it was both I guess, a good thing, a blessing and a, curse at the same time kinda thing.
Mhm. So at
Mm.
what point did writing then come into your repertoire your artistic skills?
Um, uh, so I've always my major, my f my first the actual thing that I majored in was, broadcasting, telecommunications, and
Mm,
mass media. That's what it was called at the time at Temple University. So I I've had to, write some copy, you have to do some basic journalism classes and things of
mhm,
that nature. And and so I've always sort of had it as a skill set. Definitely had to brush off the cobwebs when I made that first article, but in Korea there's a as I don't maybe people do know or don't know, there's like there's a lot of changes that have happened in both in Seoul and in Korea over the, decades and decades, historically, and one of those things have been adoption. So as a person who's a Korean adoptee, uh, somebody just had mentioned, "Hey, could you write an article?" Because there was a case going on.
mhm,
Um, I don't know how I even got into the conversation, but it was one of the people from the Korea Times, and they're
mhm.
like, "If you're interested and if, and if you want to, could you write an article about it?" And I was just like, was like, "Sure." I'm like, "Oh god." Like, having to, like, think back, like, 15 years. I'm like, "Wait, I know how to do this." It was and the Korean adopted community too, they're very specific as, like, and with any ethnic community, they're very like, "Hey, you better be you better be on it."
Mhm.
So, I think they
Uh,
also hold yeah.
did did imposter syndrome, kind of factor in to that experience as far as,
Uh,
like, you had the background, you had the
yeah,
skill level, but you had never done it,
for a while.
at
Yeah,
yeah, for a while or at that level.
yeah.
So, like, how did you kind of get yourself over that feeling of kinda, like, feeling a little, like,
Mhm,
not necessarily overwhelmed, but, like,
mhm.
it's because even when you were just saying it, it was almost like a little bit of a reluctance, like, "Why me?"
Yeah,
You know?
and I'm
Uh
like, we don't have DEIs in Korea, but I was like, "Wait." Um, um, I just kind of took a chance on it,
Mhm,
um, and it does help that the copywriter is a very cool dude, um, but I don't know, I had the same, like, scared feeling that I had when I first came to Korea, and that turned out well, and, usually the things that scare me the most, but that I have some sort of, like, skill set for is usually the things that have turned out really well. So, I think just kind of taking at certain point, you just have to take that leap of faith, I think. So,
mhm,
um, it's I won't that sounds very easy, but I think it's just for me too, it's just like, when are you ever gonna get this opportunity again? It may not come around, who knows? So,
yeah,
you don't you have nothing to lose. You have 0% things to lose at this point. So you might as well take the chance and do it. So that's been a guiding source even for photography
mhm,
because as you mentioned imposter syndrome sometimes too because I'm sort of caught in between two worlds and can understand both worlds in some
mhm,
sort of way. Um there are some times, of course, I respect things culturally, but there are still very Americanisms of me. So, um, I think after kind of realizing, there are some things that are always going to never quite fit the mold, to sort
mhm,
of trust it and go with it, as opposed to sort of fighting against it and make it my um my weapon of choice, my positive,
yes,
not to get too violent, but, like, make it my superpower, not make it the thing that I wanna, I see as something that's detrimental to myself, so,
mhm,
and usually, even whether it's, me talking to Koreans or me talking to international people, usually in the instinct of, "I might as well go for it, I have nothing to lose," that's usually when something turns out pretty well.
nice. So, in speaking about, like, the kinda, like, I guess, the cultural nuance, like, how
Mhm,
do you balance documenting, the Korean culture respectfully, but still
mhm,
bringing your perspective into
mhm.
the work as, someone who was raised in America?
Um, there I guess for me, I think that's maybe the one good thing about being a freelancer in that regard. I'm not having to, "Oh, you have to cover this no matter what you feel." So I do
Mhm,
have sort of the freedom to be able to at least s have the choice whether to cover certain things, um, and not be beholden to, like, a network or, like, a network's point of view because
mhm,
much like the United States and, Korea has that same thing, some networks, have certain points of view over other networks, and I think the one good thing about being a freelancer is that I tend to cover the things I think that I find, not only that I find I enjoy, but that I know I could bring something to it, or I know that my skill set can help the situation, in some facet or some way. And I think that kinda is what helps make the decision kind of for me, like, I don't have to, have a big, like, crisis about it.
Yeah, because 'cause I've noticed, like, a lot of what, your recent posts or a lot of, like, your recent stories that I see when you're posting your photographs, is, like, documenting Korean drag culture,
Yeah.
which I didn't know existed until you started posting about it, and I'm just like, "I need to go back to Korea now and go to a drag show."
Yo, let's go.
Because I didn't know that was a thing, and I coulda did that. I was there for 2.5 weeks and coulda did that. Um, so talk a little bit about how you got into, that scene and, like and then, what your approach is with the photography.
Yeah, I think, I know I'm saying I think a lot, but, having grown up in, like, New York and Philly in the tri-state area, I think it gives that ability to, um, meet different cultures and different subcultures and not be so, like, not dislike about it, but a lot of, like, maybe, like, trepidation about going into it.
Mhm.
And for me, especially having lived in New York, there's, like, you're brushing up against that culture, like, every day, like, whether you mean to or not. Even as a personal trainer, I've, and I know, we may mention this later, but, like, having, like, multiple jobs. So, like, I met trainers that were actors, that were singers, that were, you know, different, LGBTQIA plus, community. So you're always kind of like, you're always interacting in some way. Um, and for me, like, those have always that community has been always like, whether it's the United States or in Korea, has always been the more accepting, I think,
Mhm.
without other, like, having to go through, like, certain steps to try to, be accepted there. They're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you do great work. We really like you. Come on in." It's not like this big, "Oh, do you shoot on a Sony? Do you shoot on a Ca—" You don't have to, like, roll out the resume, your tech specs, your
Mhm.
computer specs. Like, they see the results, and they love it. And
Mhm.
I think too, in the way that, how the community is, I think that they're thankful that somebody, I assume.
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't ask how they feel about my work, but just always seeming to always ask me to do certain things. I get that feeling that, they appreciate that willingness to, like, to work with the community in that
Mhm.
way, and to, they see me put in the time and effort. They appreciate the time and effort. It's that good energy, that good back and forth
The
energy.
reciprocation, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm always internally grateful. It wasn't something that I, like, again, that I was like, "Oh, I have to try to take advantage of that community." It wasn't like such a,
Mhm.
like, intention, like business intention.
Yeah.
It actually just started with somebody asking for somebody online and posting, and me going, "Well, I love drag shows. I love that community of, like, I'll be more than happy to help out." And then, similar to what you said too, I didn't know that there was this huge subset, or a growing subset, of community, that existed. And so to see
Mhm.
that, and so to be a part of that and experience that has been amazing.
Yeah, I definitely like your work, and it's on my next career trip bucket list. Make sure I come out, and maybe I'll come and be your second shooter. Do some work together. But,
Yes.
and speaking of your work, I do have one of your photographs hanging on my gallery wall in my stairwell, which is a piece that you had. I think it was in, like, an exhibit, and then,
Yeah.
you posted about it, and I'm like, "Do you have
Damn.
prints of this? Can I buy this?" Because it was this awesome picture because I love butterflies and I love the moon. So it was this
Yeah.
picture of the butterfly, and then the moon was in the background, and you're like, this is not edited. This is what's in camera like this.
Yes.
Say, I need to have this picture so I can put it in my gallery.
Yeah.
So how do you go about doing your exhibits? Because this is something that I personally have not really done before, other than when I had my studio. I would do
Mm,
like shows with the collective that I was in the studio with.
mm.
But um, like, how do you just go about like gathering work to do an exhibit, finding exhibits? Like, are you reaching out to people? Are people coming to you? How does that work?
I wish more people were coming to me, but, and again, this is a funny happenstance because we've already mentioned it, like, during COVID, right before COVID, my school contract had already been set, and this was even before, like, any announcements of COVID were happening. But I needed coming back into Seoul, I needed a place to stay for, like, a few weeks while they were setting up housing and things like that, and
Uh-huh.
so, having sort of done, like, 1 or 2 shows for a collective before, one of the members had a nearby Airbnb
Mm.
very nicely close to Seoul Station without having to climb all those 10,000 steps.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I'm like, "Oh, she's her thing's right
On the
outside the
other side.
exit."
Yeah.
Unfortunately, she doesn't have it anymore, uh, but, um, but, she I think I was like I ended up it just ended up being that I was one of the last people to stay there, but,
Mhm.
through just that kind of interaction, I was then able to meet some of her, like some of her friends, and then,
Mhm.
some of her friends were they were a bit like more independent artists and a bit more, in the kind of that indie scene, and so they were like, "Hey, like we're doing this group exhibition. Do you want to like show one work?" And that really kind of started it, where I got to see how these things work.
Mhm.
Whether you, as a collective, try to go out and find a place and do it, which is
Mhm.
very, very normal, or whether you apply on your own independently.
Mhm.
So they have a lot of, as people, as if anybody who's ever looked into anything in Korea, as you may know, there's a lot of like cafes and like these sort of like combination places. It's a cafe and it's a something else, right?
Yeah, that's a
So
big thing here in El Paso as well. So,
really? Oh,
it's like yeah, it's
nice.
like there's one that's like a cafe and a bike shop.
Yes.
There's another one that's like it's a sushi place and a skateboard, like, store.
I've
Like,
seen like
very interesting
turtles.
combinations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like I've seen Galapagos in some of these cafes. I'm like, how did you get that into anyway? How did you get past customs? But so a lot of the cafes though are also like will show artwork.
Mhm.
So eventually, I had met somebody who I've doing like some group shows and things like that, and then you know through my own pocket and my own expense was then able to like do a few shows. I don't do them solo very often, but I was like,
Mhm.
again, somebody asked me and they gave me like a good deal, and then I was like, I might as well go for it. I might as well just see where it leads to. So
Mhm.
um in that good way, uh it sort of happened. And so um and then kind of picking up some Korean lingo kind of helped too, so looking for hashtag words and hashtag things, that always kind of helps as well.
Nice.
But I think there is and especially in the art scene, there is a lot of like openness to having international artists participate in some way or another.
Mhm.
I'm not saying you're going to be like somebody's going to be in the like modern museum of art anytime soon, or like Namjoon's going to come through anytime soon. But although I would appreciate that.
You
But
hear that, RM? RM,
yeah.
come to one of Antonia's, exhibitions. Come buy her artwork.
Yeah, but but there are a lot of opportunities for that sort of cultural exchange and things like that. So it's been nice.
Yeah, so speaking of all your opportunities, so you're a very, very busy person, because I know even when I was in Korea, like I said, I was there for I was in Seoul for probably about a week and a half, so trying to, like, link up with you. You were just always on the move. So how do you balance everything that you're doing and, like, manage, not burning out?
Um, I so the like, when when you had mentioned this, I was like, "I don't know if I have found if I have actually found
Okay,
the
here, let me
balance."
rephrase that then. Are there any specific practices
Mhm,
or, creative or non-creative that
yeah,
you have maybe implemented to kinda help manage
mhm,
your energy so
mhm,
that you don't burn out or, like, when you do burn out, it helps you to recover?
mhm. Um, I
You go
I
to the
I
day spas? 'Cause that's where I would be.
one
I
good
would be at the
ginger
day
bong.
spa every day if I lived in Korea. Like, it's so much less expensive there.
I'm not I've got I will say, every so often it is very nice.
Mhm.
So I do recommend it. I think, just, now, reminding myself that it's not life or death, I think,
Mm.
has been a big thing. Even though it it's still, like, a little bit of a joke in I guess photography Instagram, but, like, you know, like, uh, that edit can wait, that photo can wait, or,
Yeah. Or
now have it.
the memes that are like,
Yeah.
like when you have, 5 photo shoots you're supposed to be editing and the guy's, like, taking a nap.
Or like, making sure that the job if the job requires that the what I receive is also equivalent to that. So if I do
Mhm.
have to make these these quick fast edits,
Yeah.
that what I get back from it is worth
That
my
you're being
time.
compensated for
Yeah,
your
and my
that
energy.
yeah, exactly, and I think
Mm,
that's where a lot of photographers where we struggle, especially in the beginnings. Um, we don't really in a way, we don't really value our time and our effort.
mm,
Like, we see that we're creating we're pricing based on the product,
mhm,
but not really the effort that goes into it, and this is a
mhm,
conversation I recently had with my business advisor, and he was
mhm,
looking at my services that I had listed out. He's like, "Of these services, which one takes the least amount of effort?" Like, which because we were
mhm,
trying to determine my ROI. He's like,
mhm,
"Which one takes the least amount of effort?" I'm like,
mhm,
"Well, events, because I shoot it and the images are they're delivered.
mhm,
That's it.
yeah, mm,
There's nothing else I need to do after the fact, especially now since I'm using this application. This might actually be good for you for the drag shows. So I use this
mhm,
application called Zeno Instant. Zeno is
oh,
a Chinese company, I believe.
mhm,
But when you shoot, like you basically you link your phone to your camera,
mhm.
and then when you shoot, it instantly uploads. So there's an AI editor in it. So the
Oh,
AI
nice.
edits however you indicate the settings, edits the
Mhm,
photo, instantly uploads it, and then you have a QR code that people can scan. They can get their pictures right there, then and there. So
oh
then
my
there's
god.
no, like, effort you need to
Mhm,
like, you don't have to come back, upload all the
mhm,
pictures from your camera to whatever your delivery method is. People don't have to wait 2, 3 days for their event photos, they can get them right then and there. So Imma send you that link after this, but
please.
I found out about that earlier this year. I went to, so I'm saying earlier this year, it's currently
Mhm,
2025 while we're recording this, about to be 2026. But I was at Imaging USA and,
mm,
I had went over to the Zeno booth. No, actually, I saw someone who was doing, pictures. So, she
mhm,
took my picture and she's
mhm.
like, "Scan this QR code, you can get it right now." I was like, "Wait, what is this whole setup? Explain this to me." So she was using a service called, I think it's called Spot Your Photos.
Mm,
And then later, when I went into the exhibit hall,
mhm,
I met with Zeno because Zeno, I was already using them for, my print stuff. I use them
mhm,
for albums and stuff.
mhm,
And they had just launched their Zeno Instant app, and they were
mhm,
demoing that, and they were like, "If you sign up today, you get the whole attachment and everything for free."
mm.
And I've been
Nice.
using that ever since for anything I'm shooting a live event, so I'm gonna
Mm.
definitely put you onto that.
Yes, please.
But, and
It's
that
usually, like, music. It's actually usually music and corporate events, which is kind of
mm,
funny to me too, so
yeah, because
yeah.
they want instant turnaround because
Yeah.
they that's part of their branding and stuff.
Yeah.
Usually, if you're doing, like, a portrait shoot, you have a little more
Mm.
leeway,
Yeah.
and there's tools and stuff now coming out that help with that, that help with culling and
Thank God.
they're adding stuff into Lightroom now. I did a fashion show recently, and I let
Yes.
Lightroom cull because it was like 1,800 pictures. I'm like, "I'm not going through all these pictures." I was shooting like it crazy. And I let it narrowed it down to like 300 pictures, and I went through and did my edits and then posted it.
Mm,
But, definitely,
yeah.
I think as photographers, finding tools that help us manage
Mhm.
that back end post-production process makes things a lot easier.
For sure.
Um, but I will say, I think you seem to manage it all very well. You're always in good spirits when I talk to you. I don't I know that we all have moments of, like, complete exhaustion, but,
Yeah.
I feel like there's always a good chat whenever we're talking
Yeah.
to each other, whether it's to vent or to, talk about
Mm,
our wins.
mm,
But, as a creative living abroad,
mm,
how do you create boundaries with your
mm,
work so that you have time for your own personal, wants and things you
mm.
wanna do and time to rest? 'Cause
Um
I swear you're on a airplane every time I open Instagram. I'm like, "What city is she in now?"
Uh, so it's also funny, like, even before photography, I was never and I don't I've never talked to therapists, so I don't know if it's, when the way I was raised or whatever.
Mhm,
I've never been one to kinda sit still a little bit, to be in one
mhm.
place, so that might also be added to it, but anyway, I think I I think, uh, uh, it is, like, to value your time, to really, um, kind of, like, as you just mentioned, like, some sort of, um, high value to it, and to not to diminish ourselves, and I still get into the habit of overworking myself and doing those
Mm,
things, so I don't think everybody has to be you're never gonna be perfect at it, but I think it's, um, uh, finding, those moments, and then also, being able to not jump at every opportunity that's offered to you.
that's a
Um,
hard one too.
yeah,
Mhm,
'cause I still have to tell myself that every day, but to be confident enough to be like, "There will be another opportunity." This isn't this one thing isn't a do or die kind of thing. There'll be other things, other situations, and then understanding who is this goes through, like, communication and maybe having those other skill sets
mhm.
that are helpful even if they're not entirely photography related, but, like, when you start dialogue or messaging with somebody, I think you can kinda get a feel if they're just taking, like, kind of advantage of the situation,
Mhm.
or if they're, you know if you are going to extend that, that TFP or something like that, that they're really you're both doing the work, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's not just you being the photographer having to set everything up, organize everything, and or vice versa, and you're n like, you're both getting equal
benefits from
value
it.
from it, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so just kind of being okay with those both those things I think are two of the things that have helped really kind of set boundaries, and I
mhm.
think being able to, explore the ADHD part, while not formally, but be able to, kinda, see where those things are, and
Yeah,
start asking myself those questions, has kind of helped too in that regard.
Yeah. Since you mentioned about, like, not saying yes to everything, because 'cause I've been reading a lot lately about, or I should say my algorithm's been feeding me a lot of stuff lately about capacity, understanding your
Mhm,
capacity, right?
mhm, yeah,
So and that's a very different thing from energy or,
mhm.
desire. Like, do you have the bandwidth, as they call it in corporate America? Do you have the bandwidth to take this on right now, right?
Yeah,
Instead of
mhm,
trying to squeeze it in, like, "Oh, yeah, I'll make it work." It's like,
mm,
'cause, I've had a conversation I was on a mental health podcast, and I talked about how when I'm in a state of burnout, like, I will
mm,
pull back from projects and stuff because I
mhm,
can't perform to my best ability
mhm,
if my brain is, like, just not functioning properly, and,
mhm.
now we're at the menopause age, so it's like ADHD is just off the wire, right?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think really kinda sitting with yourself and understanding what your capacity is, right?
Mhm,
So it's like, I might
yeah,
be really busy right now to the point where
mhm,
it's like, I can't take on, you know, um, like a massive, like, branding project, but I
mhm.
might be able to go ahead and shoot, like, 3 houses, right? 'Cause that's no
Yeah.
interaction with people, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah,
this is
just
kinda why
you?
I pulled back from wedding photography, 'cause wedding
Yeah.
photography is very draining because 'cause you're dealing with a lot of people, and we're
Yes.
introverts, so
Yes.
it's like, when you're around that many people, it would take me 3 or 4 days to
Yes.
recover from shooting a wedding
Mm,
because it's a 14 to 16-hour days sometimes,
mhm.
and it's a lot of people
Yeah.
versus I go shoot a house, usually the only person I'm talking to is the realtor, maybe the homeowner is there, or maybe
Yes.
nobody. Maybe they just give me a code to go in the house, take the pictures, and come out. So, it's like understanding
Mm,
how much of you is gonna be required for that
mhm.
particular project, right?
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily don't just say no to things, don't say yes to things,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
really
yeah. Mhm,
evaluate how much effort do I need to put into this, and do I
mhm,
have the capacity for it right now?
mhm.
So, that's one of the things that I've recently, took 25 years to get here, but recently learned as a creative to really measure,
Yeah.
so, um
Um, I think for me too, because when I was actually in Korea when I realized that I had maybe I had ADHD because
Mhm,
Um, when I was I don't know, when I was, like I wasn't the hyperactive kid,
mhm,
or I'm able to channel that energy. So, like, no one was like, "Oh, yeah, maybe she has, like, ADHD," and, of course, it's all changed from that point too. So but there was a point where I was so stressed and burnt out that, like, I'm not the best about where my keys are and other things
mhm,
are at
yeah,
anyway, but it was like there was at some point, there was just, like, a blank space there, and I'm like, This isn't great, this isn't great," and then things would be in places that you wouldn't put things, and
mhm.
so I had a whole, like, "Oh my god, do I have d
Like, do I
ADHD?"
have, like, early onset dementia?
Yes, I'm
Yeah,
like
I was going through that as well. I'm like, something why I'm having, like, chunks of memory just, like,
yeah, like,
disappear.
not there, and then I'm just like, "Jesus Christ." And I think, I don't know, because I'm not a big person that goes and Googles, like, symptoms, but then I was, uh, I don't know, for whatever reason, was just like, 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 as we just mentioned, like, maybe I have, like, early onset or something. So I
Mhm,
was like, putting in symptoms, and then one of them was, like, the possibility of ADHD was there, and I was
mhm,
like, well, that's the kind of the I don't wanna say easier one to test out, but that's the at least like, the out of all these problems, this is at least maybe the simpler one to figure out, and then,
mhm,
um, I luckily, in the good ways that social media and social networking can happen, I had asked a few people, like, "Hey, where is a good place to go for diagnosis and things like that?" Because I am in Korea. And then, the worry about, like, obviously, for me, my Korean's gotten better, but it's not anywhere near like, let me explain my, let
Mhm.
me explain my symptoms, like, in
Yeah.
Korean. And so obviously I need an English speaking person, so, I thankfully in a good way for social networking, got a few places that I could look up and
Mhm.
went to and get a diagnosis, medications, etc. And it after they're like, "Yeah, we really think you we really
I know, I
like."
think I was in there for, like, 5 minutes, and she was like, "Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're
like, yeah,
definitely ADHD."
she and, like, I don't know still how it presents itself in Korea in some ways, but,
Mhm.
um, the slow acceptance, I think, was also good timing of certain, like, spectral things,
Mhm.
and so, she was kind, she was nice, but she was also like, "Yeah, you have this, and then you have this, and then your age." Like, and then I did tell her about, like, I also like that she was kind of open-minded about, um, like like I had trepidations about, like, medication in general.
Mhm.
So she's like, "Well, don't worry, we'll start you off big and we'll start you off
Y
small, sorry. So we'll
yeah.
start you off small and go that way." But I guess the long story short is that it also having that diagnosis also, like, made me realize that I have, like, 80 things on my plate, and it's getting done, but it's not getting done really well, so maybe
Mhm.
now I have to, turn it down a little bit, and I think that kind of, in a weird way, kind of helped me to realize that, even if I'm guilty, still guilty of it a little bit.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. I've kinda gotten to that place too. It's like, okay, is this a like, an impulse? Like, me wanting
Yeah.
to do this thing? Is it an impulse? Or is the universe trying to tell me to do this thing? So it's
Yeah.
so I'm learning better how to prioritize, right? So it's
Mm,
like, um, it may not necessarily be like, "Okay, I can't," "this is not something I should ever do," but it's like,
mhm,
let me postpone it a little bit,
yeah,
because I feel like if creative inspiration comes to you, it's
mhm,
coming to you for a reason.
mhm,
But, if you can't, again, going back to capacity, if you can't
mhm.
manage it right now, then it's like, okay, you make my old boss used to say, the tickler file, put it in a tickler file, come back to it later, but don't
Exactly.
necessarily abandon it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what kind of having a formal diagnosis really helps with is that one, it helps you make sense of like everything that's going on in your head, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
But it allows you to now focus on the tools that help you manage all of that. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. So what does your creative process look like when you're working on a piece, right? When
Mhm,
you're working on, um, especially when you're doing an article. Yeah, because you
mhm.
got to interview, uh, 2 of the guys from Sinners. I was feeling some type of way about that. I'm like,
I
"Maybe
would
let
I
me
would
pack my bags and go to Korea and go work with Antonia."
I wanna say that was one of those, like, like, I wanted to expand my horizons, like, I definitely wanted to keep, writing about adoption issues and adoption, based articles, but, I think in in exploring one's identity, you're not just this one thing, and you have
Mhm,
we also talked about we have so many interests and so many things have, like, inspired me, whether consciously or subconsciously, artistically. So it's not just photography, it's movies, it's cinematography, it's at one point I wanted to be a PD, like a music PD. So it's not
mhm,
just those things that um inspire me even if I'm working on my own project. So um, I think I had, emailed I just had, like, just pitched a story of to somebody,
mhm,
um, and, um, they were like, "Well, I don't know about their schedule, but this press junket coming up for the movie Sinners." And because the teasers haven't really come out in Korea yet, I had to, like, do a quick Google search, and I'm like, "Oh, Sure. And,
Like
at
Michael B.
first,
Jordan, absolutely.
yeah. Oh god, if he was there
I know. I'm like, if I had seen you in that picture, if I had seen Michael B. Jordan in that picture,
but
like
but Omar
Antonia.
Miles,
But
yeah,
even
but
still, you got the interview.
yeah.
His name is Miles, right?
Yeah, Omar
Miles and
Miles
Omar.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, and they were super sweet and super
Mhm.
nice guys. And then I also got to interview the one of the music supervisors, and then one of the other production team, and because they were both Korean, so they
Mhm.
had a Korean background, and even that conversation was really interesting because again, there's that how to have your own creative input, but obviously, like Sinners has its own like cultural and and Ryan has, assumingly, I mean, I've not met him, but has his own vision. So
Then yeah.
how to contribute to that vision productively without and but also respectively. So we both had, like both those interviews were just so nice to have. But it just started with, again, I'm like, I kind of know where, like, I don't have any delusions of grandeur. I'm not like, oh yeah, I'm the best journalist in the world. Haha. You should interview with me. But I think but I think I tell people straight up like what it's going to be, like what we're going to be talking about. This is like the pitch of the article, and if they're open to it, yay. If they're not, then okay. Then I mean, again, I have nothing to lose in that
Yeah.
situation. Um
That's what I
and
another thing I need to talk to you about is, like, pitching articles and stuff. I wanna get into that because like, yet another thing that you and I have in common, we had the same major. So, I didn't go to Temple, but I did go to Cabrini, and my degree is in English and communication, and my concentration was journalism. So, it's like, you and I have had this parallel life living across the river from each other.
Yo.
So and
Yeah.
I've been wanting to, like, get back into, journalism and writing, which I've been doing a little bit with my blog, but,
Mm.
I
Yeah.
I used to really enjoy interviewing people, and there's a magazine here in El Paso, so maybe Imma talk to you about how do I pitch an idea?
Yeah. What was I gonna say? For me, it's just, um, not necessarily finding the cool or edgy angle, just to find the angle that is meaningful to me.
Mhm.
So, as being a Korean American person, but always liking to, um, y- and this could the and for my background, like even having grown up in the U.S., I did not grow up in a place where there was a lot of like Asian, Korean, wherever however you want to break down those subsets. But I did
Mhm.
work, but I was, it wasn't totally like Caucasian either. There was a lot of like different like ethnicities around. Sorry,
Mhm.
losing my words, but like ethnicities and interactions and friendships and things like that, and getting to experience those things and how I don't know where I'm going with this, but like
How
just
that
really
all comes to
it's
influence,
get
like, your perspective.
yeah, and so, especially with creative endeavors like movies and theater and things like that, and people, especially coming from different backgrounds, how they sort of influence one another is always a interest to me because I love that perspective too, and I love when that comes together in
Mhm.
the creative world, and so any way that I can find that angle, if it's there, I like that. Or just how did you get it? Like, how did you get into this? Like, how did
Mhm.
how did you do this? Like, set design or director or things like that. Especially if, being women and minority. Like, how did you get into it? Like, how did
Yeah.
how did how did how did you fall into it and not take that? whether you took the usual academic route or not, like,
Mhm.
that, and I find those human stories to be very interesting.
Yeah,
And
same.
so, yeah, and so in my pitch, it usually has some sort of, very humanistic side to that. So I think, I don't know if I'm the best pitcher in the world, but those are, uh, those are usually what I tell them. Again, I'm not one of those people, to be, like, very schmoozy, like, good if you can do it, but as you said, as being introverts. So the only thing I have is my mind and my experiences, and
Mhm.
that's what I put into those pitches usually.
Nice. So before we wrap it up, is there any final words you have? Any advice you have for young creatives who maybe are a little may have some self-doubt in
Mm,
approaching the type of work that they want to do?
mm. I think we had mentioned this too, like, we don't always have the job that we think is creative at the time.
Mhm.
And that's not always been my goal either. But you'll be surprised where these skill sets can help each other. So,
Yeah.
like, being introverted, I don't think, had I had very introverted jobs all the time, I don't know if I woulda, like, there's a customer service and a different business aspects where you have to, like, communicate with people.
Mhm.
You have to both listen, be receptive, as well as being, knowing what to say,
Mhm.
to understand the client's needs. And so I think, like, you're not gonna love every job that you have, and da 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 da,
Yeah.
but there can be value in it in the future. Even my personal training job, I didn't think I was ever gonna have, like, an opportunity to, um, photograph, like, more physical, like, subjects.
Mhm.
And then it also helps me with angles and understanding posture and body language and things like that.
Mhm.
So even things like that, can be helpful in if you think about it in that way. So, again, I'm not saying every job is going to be like a golden, rainbow of opportunity,
Yeah.
but they can they can help you out in unexpected ways, and you're not any less of an artist if you do have a job that's not necessarily
Yeah.
artist related. So, um, yeah.
Okay. Well, where can everyone find you? Where can they see your work?
Uh, uh, I didn't think about the length of this when I created this, I just saw in Korea that, like, the underscore was really popular to put in usernames.
Mhm.
I would have thought about this a little differently, and but it's, Instagram.com Antonia with an A, slash creative slash services. Sorry, guys.
It's,
And then
Antonia underscore, right? So
yeah,
Antonia
yeah, underscore
underscore
creative underscore
creative
services.
underscore services. So it'll be
Yeah.
up on the screen. Don't worry.
Yes. And then, there's, AntoniaCreativeServices.com. I have most of the information is more towards, a Korean base, but if you contact me there too, you could see some work, and, you can, whether it's in the US or whether it's Korea, you can always pop me up if you had any questions or wanted a photo shoot or anything like that. Would always be a great way to contact me as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Antonia. And the next time I'm in Korea, I'm coming to have you do my hanbok shoot at the
Yes.
palace. And
Yes.
we went and rented our hanboks. We went to the palace, and then later on, I saw that you do photo shoots there. I was like, we was setting
I
up my phone and taking
I have
selfies
a
and stuff.
I have a funny side story to that.
Mhm.
I didn't know that that would be something that I would enjoy to do. To be honest, in the beginning, it was like, okay, that's, like, again, same thing with the business advisor, like, "Okay, Antonia, you're not completely fluent in Korean, but what are photography services that other foreigners like?"
Mhm.
And that's of course really one of them, and then
Yeah.
so, I tried it out a few times and I found that I liked it. Uh, they all don't come out they all not everything's, always peaches and cream, but, um,
Mhm.
and getting to know the client and seeing what they want and seeing, whether it's the kinda basic one or whether they go full out, they
Mhm.
really look beautiful in it, like,
Yeah.
and to be able to capture that, I think for somebody and give them that experience has been something that I found, like, unexpectedly, like, "Oh, that's super cool," like, I wanna
Mhm.
keep doing it as much as possible, and then meeting people from different places,
Yeah,
because
from
it's
all over
not
the
just
world, yeah.
the yeah, it's not just the US, it's, like, Singapore and Germany and the
Mhm.
Philippines, and so it's been really cool that way, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
so if you're visiting Seoul and you go to can you pronounce it for me? The palace?
Gyeongbokgung.
Yes, if you go to the palace, reach out to Antonia. You go, you rent your hanbok, you go in, and you have your full-blown photo shoot. Feel like you're back in the was it the Jeon Dynasty?
Yeah,
So, um,
the, Chosun Dynasty, there we go.
Joseon, okay.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
close.
Yeah. That's okay.
But thank you again, Antonia.
Yeah,
I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too.
Life doesn't always stay in perfect focus. There's magic in the blur we can't ignore. Every shadow, every highlight softly shows us who we are and who we're reaching for. When the world feels out of frame, every thought, every fear, every revelation, I find my way through the quiet flame, light in life and all the limitations.